I want to give a shout out to David Katz. I was in Honolulu 2 weeks ago lecturing for the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, and I spoke about the Neo-San study, and I thought it was a Japanese word that meant great sushi. And I realize now it's Honolulu, San Francisco, and I thought it was Hiroshima, but Nagasaki. You know everything, and I sit at the feet of David Katz. Anyways, I will happily tackle Finland. You heard, if you were at Dr. Willard's talk, he mentioned the venerable name of Ancel Keys, Ph.D., because he had two of them, and studies he did called the 7-Country Study, and that launched in 1958. One of the sites picked to compare dietary patterns versus other societies like Okinawa, like Crete, like some American communities, was East Finland, called North Karelia. East Finland and North Karelia, it's confusing, but it was known to be a pocket of potential heart disease and a very high-fat diet, specifically as they evolved the study, high saturated fat diet. And it turned out by the late 60s, about 10 years after the 7-Country Study was launched, that it was pretty clear that the highest heart attack rate in the Western world was in East Finland, a budding Russia. And their diet was very heavy in sausage and very heavy in butter, and had a saturated fat rate that approached 30% of calories were from saturated fat. To the point that 40, 45, 50-year-old men were having heart attacks at a rate unprecedented. And when men have heart attacks, they often just drop dead. It's a special thing we do better than women. Many gifts we have to end up dying earlier than women. So there was this massive public health study. They found this guy with the cutest name of Puka-Peska, an MD in the public health sector, young man who took on the onus of going to food companies. Can we sneak beans in the sausage? Let the women know. God forbid, don't tell the men when they go out in the fields. Can we, change the butter to margarine on the store shelves? They did recommend quitting smoking. That sometimes gets brought up as a criticism. It wasn't just the food. It was a comprehensive lifestyle change. And within 5 years, the heart attack rate had dropped 80 to 85%. Well, if you live in West Finland, you say, I want to be part of it. So they extended the study to the entire country. And they ultimately showed, and it continues to this day, major and significant reductions in heart attack rates. But it's extended to overall lifespan and certainly cancer cases too, not 80 to 85%, but cancer is somewhere in the 50% or so range. So, many of us point to it as one of the most instructive of public health measures by changing diet to really change measurable and important lifestyle measures. There's this beautiful graph of just drop in heart attack rates over 5 years. So North Karelia. Yep. There you go. David, perhaps the annals of internal medicine has
sabotaged
got
my
your
microphone.
button?
I don't know. Great answer by Joel. Just to append something. So the North Karelia study is currently run by Puka-Peska's successor, Erkki Vartiainen, and we were privileged. I met Erkki in Lithuania. We were privileged to actually have him come over and speak at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine meeting. So the story is beautiful, and it lasts a very long time. Over a span of almost half a century, rates of heart disease in North Karelia dropped 82%. Average life expectancy went up a full decade. One of the more stunning examples of community-wide effective public health intervention in the world. But, alas, this age of alternative truth, social media echo chambers, misinformation, and the well-funded machinations of the beef industry have caused the Finnish to begin doubting all the things that Americans are doubting. So, maybe meat is really better for me, right? Big fat surprise and all of that. So Erkki reported that actually after all those many years of stunning and luminous benefit from their intervention, that young Finns were starting to increase their intake of meat and their intake of saturated fat. And for the first time in half a century, they saw the mortality curve going back up. We have to be very careful never to take for granted the gains that we've achieved, because famously, familiarity breeds contempt. We're seeing that, by the way. I don't know how this audience is going to feel about this comment. I will take my chances just the same. It's clearly off topic, but we're seeing that with vaccines. Vaccines are one of the more stunning advances in all of public health history. And yet, when you get comfortable with the fact that you don't have to worry that your kids are going to get poliomyelitis every spring when nobody gets smallpox, you start to worry more about vaccines than the dreaded diseases that vaccines prevent, until you get a new dread disease like the coronavirus, and then everybody's wondering when there'll be a vaccine. But we tend to do that. We get complacent about our gains, and then we start to shift our perspective until we're imperiled again. So sadly, some of those gains in North Korea are imperiled.
Can I ask you? I was at that lecture where they talked. I was interested in, and maybe you could comment, or one of you two comment. They were so. It seemed like they thought that the margarine shift was the biggest part of that. I was very impressed at the ACLM meeting that they were all into how the margarines seemed to shift. And the other thing I wanted in this change that I knew was happening, they seemed to say that there was an abutting area in Finland that was eating mainly meat and doing better than North Korea. That's how it started. Do you know if there's any truth to that?
So I just have the benefit, Joel, of having been at the lecture. So as Joel mentioned, they did a lot of things, Garth. So they focused on reducing smoking. They focused on reducing sodium intake. They focused on reducing saturated fat. And then much of the replacement was with polyunsaturated fat from plant sources. Honestly, I think if they had reduced saturated fat with any healthy alternative, they would have witnessed much the same benefit. But I think Urki and others were kind of subscribed to the Mediterranean diet notion. So, I think Ansel Keys also, Ansel Keys, by the way, everybody associates his name with a low-fat diet. He practiced a Mediterranean diet. He advocated for a Mediterranean diet. He really was focused on reducing saturated fat. So,
And way outlived all of his critics.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But Pukka-Pekka and Erkki Vartiainen were sort of disciples of Ansel Keys, so I think they may have had an early focus, Joel, maybe you can speak more to this, on benefits of replacing saturated fat with unsaturated fat. That was the purpose of the margarine, and obviously this was not trans fat containing margarine.
Right, I remember them saying that, but they were very proud of their margarine.
But they did achieve multiple changes in lifestyle.
Yeah.
I think, I agree with Joel, I think that's a good thing. At the end of that, you're not able to say, okay, how much exactly of this benefit was related to salt versus saturated fat versus tobacco.
Yeah.
But, they sort of lined up all the bad stuff, knocked it all down, and added 10 years to life expectancy. You sort of say after that, who cares?
Who cares, right? Yeah.
It was all
Healthy
bad,
lifestyle.
they fixed it all.